Hola, hola, es Anabel. Vamos a ver si te encuentro. A ver, Anabel Pinto. Encuentro a Anabel Pinto, pero no. Hola, Sandra. Ah, pero parece que sí funcionó. ¡Ah! Anabel, lo
Lo logré.
lograste. Qué bien. Okay, so we're going to do this in English, okay? That's the whole purpose,
Yes,
is
I
to
did
start
hear.
content in English. So welcome, welcome, Anna. Nice to see you. So long no see.
You too. I'm at the beach, so I have to hide in my room because I have people in the living room. This is a small place. I was going to be outside to greet
Yeah.
you because it's such a
Uh-huh.
pretty day. But then I came in just in case the
We're
internet.
hooking up things here as we go. Okay, okay, okay. Got it. Okay, so now I can see you because I could only see myself like from the, face up or something. I don't know. Thank
You
you.
look great, by the
I
way.
know,
I
right?
haven't seen you in a
Yeah,
while.
because we didn't see each
Yeah,
other in
it's been a
October when
while.
I went.
No. And I'm probably going to go out there in
Oh,
end of September for a wedding. So I'll let you know so
excellent,
we can all get
excellent.
together. All the
Absolutely.
wonderful
There's like
women that you
27
have
of
over
us,
there.
so with you it'll be 28. Oh, it'll be fantastic. Anyway, good. Well, I want to
Yes.
also welcome Anna Kavalov, who's here with us, and Anna Arriaga. Apparently, we have at least, two people who are joining us, and that's good. And I expect more because it's still not 5 p.m. I just wanted to make sure that you and I had the proper
Yes.
connection so that we can
Of
get
course.
this going. But anyway, but hey, I'm kind of
Right.
envious that you're in Ana Maria.
I know. You want me to give
Oh
you a
my
peek just to
God,
make you
you're
more
gonna do
envious?
that.
since we're
You're
since we're
going
waiting for
to
people to
do that.
join.
Okay, all right.
I am gonna do that because it's sunset. So look, okay, so now there we
Oh, shut
go.
up. Look at that. Hola,
Isn't that
Elizabeth.
pretty?
Nice to
I
see
know.
you. And
It's
Sandra.
beautiful. It's been
Wow.
very hot, very, very hot. The whole
Wow.
heat wave in the
Wow, wow,
country
wow,
is
wow.
coming
Lovely
through.
place.
So,
Lovely
yeah.
place. Well, it's my,
Thank
well,
you.
thank
It's
you so much.
yours.
I know. I was there when I was running through all the hurricanes that came through Florida when I was there.
Oh my God. We helped each other, didn't we? You helped me
the
big
hurricanes
time.
the
That's for sure.
hurricanes get to saw me, and they probably said, oh my God, another hurricane. So
That's right. And then they
yeah,
went south.
the
It's like we got
hurricanes the
competition
hurricanes said,
here.
oh my God, another natural phenomenon. Okay, so welcome to Douglas Pujol. Thank you for joining us. So why don't we go ahead and get started, Annabelle, because it's around 4:59, so we might as well call this 5 p.m., right? It's 5 p.m. somewhere.
Whatever you
So
want.
anyway, so I
I'm,
just wanted to
I'm
welcome
ready.
you and thank you for doing this with me. Anabel is my dear friend, and this is the second time that we're going to do this live, but except that this time we're doing it in English. Last time we did it in Spanish, right? So that's pretty cool. So
That's right.
the reason that we're doing it is because, and I want to introduce who Anabel is. Welcome to everybody who's joining us now. The reason that we're doing it is because we want to have Genesis Project do some English language materials, because victims come, from all over the world, and we are in the States, and so there are people who have told me that they need us to do this content in English, and so here we are doing this. And the reason I invited Annabelle, since we did it before, and it was one of the most seen lives that we have on our Instagram, I thought it was important to do it again. And I just want to introduce Anabelle Pinto. Anabelle is a Gestalt psychologist. Anabelle has also been in the very high echelons of Fortune 500 companies, and she is an executive coach. Anabelle also has a degree in alternative medicine, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Functional medicine. My God, I'm
You
turning
have, you
red,
what?
Natalie. I'm
You
turning
are
red.
all that and more.
I know. It's just I hear you
No,
say it.
no,
I'm
no,
like,
no,
oh
no.
my God.
And then you also, and you also are you have a degree in nutrition, right? Right. So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
you've done all that.
I
On top
sure
of
do.
that,
Always
exactly. On top
learning.
of that,
Always
because you
learning.
like learning, you the veritable eat, pray, love woman, right? Because Annabelle, seriously, that story of the ashram in India, it just kills me. So Annabelle spent, what was it, 6 months in an ashram in India, peeling carrots and not
Yep.
speaking.
That was one
Oh
of my
my God, I
jobs.
loved it. Peeling carrots and not speaking, because it was one of those silent things in an ashram in India. So she learned a lot about yoga and meditation. She also visited China. And if you need, you lived in China.
I lived in China
Okay.
2.5 years.
So there you
Two
go.
and a
So
half
you speak
years.
Chinese
Yeah.
as well. Oh my God. Just a woman of any kind. And just someone knows about Qigong, and she knows about, just all sorts of things. But I think that one of the most important reasons why I have her over is because of course, her degree in psychology, and because she herself is a victim, or was a victim, and is a survivor of what is called here in this country narcissistic abuse. Okay. And so we're mostly here, well, of course, Genesis Project has that as a mission, right? To teach people about what it is, what is a covert psychopath, what is a malignant narcissist, what is the profile of the victim, and to teach people, how do we deal with this in society? How can we stem, what these people do to the victims, and how can we educate others so that not only will it not happen to them, but if it happens, how to get out quicker than it took us to get, out of our relationships. And I wanted to start, Annabelle, by acknowledging, by discussing something that we discussed when we did this live in Spanish. And at that time, there was a movie that had come out in Netflix, and I don't know if you saw it, but if you didn't, you had to see it. It was The Tinder Swindler. It was that story. Oh, God.
Oh, yes, yes. Can I pause for a minute, Nati? Listen, I know I have friends because it's Friday night in Tampa or Florida that can't join, but they
Yes,
can
and they,
watch this in YouTube
correct.
afterwards.
Yes.
Is that correct? In the
Yes. They
Genesis
can watch it
channel?
on
Okay.
our YouTube channel, and
All
I
right.
can send you the link for the YouTube that the Genesis has us created, where we will upload this. Hopefully we'll keep it to an hour, because otherwise I can't upload it. But also it will be left here on Instagram, so they can always get into an Instagram account and watch it. Okay, so.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to ask you, if you would be so kind, I'm seeing some of my friends even from high
Wow,
school
nice.
join the, yeah. Yeah, so could you do us a favor? Could you describe your amazing mission and what you are doing and why you are now also targeting the English speaking world? Because I know there was a huge lack of understanding and comprehension, and I would even think empathy on the Spanish side where we started. But now, this population is more and more just being discovered. Maybe the people who are joining are not even victims of
they know
sociopath
somebody,
integrated.
because, right, because
But they know
even if they don't
somebody.
think they are, or
So
they
if
think
you
they
would,
know somebody. Yeah.
exactly. So if you
We'll
could
do that.
just for the sake of the ones joining, if you could do us that favor, because I'm very proud of you and what you're doing, and I just don't want that to be ran
Thank you.
over
That's
by our
fine.
interview.
So I'm Natalie Ferro, and we have been friends, Annabelle and I, for over 14 years now, or something to that effect. 13 years, something like that. Yeah. And we met through the person who was in my life, who was, and I now recognize, I now see it, when I met him, I met him when I was in third grade. Obviously, I didn't know anything about psychopaths. But then he came into my life when I was 43 years old, and I ended up marrying him. And that's when I met Annabelle, because he knew your brother, right? So we actually know each other through him. After
It's a gift he left us, isn't it?
And
It's a
He lets
very
me
nice
many nice
gift
gifts
that he
like you,
left.
yes. And because they always surround themselves with beautiful people. But the statistics are quite staggering. It's about between 4 and 6% of the world population is considered to have an antisocial disorder, an antisocial personality disorder with traits either of narcissism or psychopathy, okay? And people don't know that those people are around. We think of a psychopath as somebody who is in jail, like Hannibal the cannibal type person, and that's not who they are. Many psychopaths, covert psychopaths, are actually people who make it really high in business. They can be politicians, they can be lawyers, they can be actors, they can be all sorts of things because they are in all sorts of walks of lives. Some even make it to president and have, and in many countries of the world, I might say. And so we don't recognize them. They are very, very charming individuals and people that you genuinely like, and what's there not to like, right? Because you know who I'm talking about, and it was incredibly charming. But once you are the victim, and they have on average about 60 victims per lifetime. And so so you do the math.
What?
60.
Say
Hi, Edwin.
60?
Yeah, 60, 60. Right. That's exactly how many per life. And so if 6% of the world population is in that disorder, in that personality disorder, and on average they have 60 victims, do the math, right? Of how many millions. And that's why it's affecting so many people, and that's why we now have critical mass. I mean, the more I read, the more I see, there's more and more people, especially the young people, are more aware of it. I invited somebody, she's watching us, and I invited somebody yesterday, and she's like, oh my God, Natalie, I was just talking to a friend about this. And I said, good, then invite your friend to watch us as well. And so it's critical. This should be something that is taught in schools, I swear to God, because we can be victims of this. It can happen in your house. It can happen in a relationship, but it can also happen at work, and so, yeah. So you need to be aware of what the traits are and how to, how to save yourself from this. But today, so we're going to be talking because a lot of you are going to actually know people who are going through this, and it's really tough if you're not trained or if you don't know what you're facing. It's really tough to be friends with somebody who's going through this type of abuse because you don't know what to do, right? And so, and people, there's a lot of, and that's why I was bringing up the Tinder swindler. One of the things that amazed me when I watched the movie, and it was, a big hullabaloo, people were talking about it, the most common comment was, well, they deserved it. Those women were really stupid, or those women had no self-esteem, or those women are just not educated enough, or those women, didn't see, and you just go, wow, okay. It's really incredible, right? When people tell me, no, this happens to people who don't have self-esteem. By the way, it doesn't only happen to women, it happens to men as well. And we happen to have, so Genesis was created by two victims who got together, and it was victims of the same psychopath. So I basically called up the future victim of my ex, and I said, if you want to talk to me, I'm here. This is going to be really ugly. If you don't take care of yourself, my past is going to be your future. And she did. We talked for about 4 hours that day, and the rest is history, and here we are. And so, and then we joined a third soon-to-be victim. So there's 3 of us, actually. And, but anyway, so we've created this project with the idea of helping the victims. And we have a support group that runs in WhatsApp. Right now it's in Spanish, but we are looking forward to creating an English speaking support group. Why do we have a support group? Because we need it. One of the things that helped Gloria and I survive what we survived was the fact that we had each other, was the fact that we could call each other any time of the day, because the attacks you're going to have, right, on, like the attacks of, and I don't mean like somebody's going to attack you, the feeling that you're going to have that you can't survive it is going to come up on a given night at 2 a.m., or at 8 p.m. or at 6 a.m. You don't know when this is going to come over you. And you need to have somebody that is not a therapist that has gone through this to help you through it. right? To help walk you off the ledge. And so, and that is what really helped both of us. But we're going to talk some more about what helped us when we do our next live, you and I, about how did we get out of these relationships and in what kinds of things helped us. So that's another live that we're doing in July. And we're going to set a date for that. So, but anyway, so for now, just know that
I'm going to make a pause, Natalie. Something you said. Yes, we became acquainted through your ex, and I could have been just that victim. The only reason I wasn't was because I knew I could spot him a mile away. I didn't have Genesis, but I had the unfortunate experience that I had married. I had been there and done that. And I think one of the reasons why also Natalie's asked me to join in this, you know, how do we support victims of this type of relationship and abuse, because it's very abusive. It's because I was there for her. I knew exactly. I mean, yes, I have a psychology title, and we'll talk about the type of psychology, which I didn't really apply in this case. But I just wanted to make that pause because I would have been one of those 60 now that you mentioned that horrific number.
He tried. Because, not over
for 9 years.
After he left, after I kicked him out, he did call you and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going over there, and now you're going to see how much I love you." And because you knew, then obviously you didn't fall for that. But yeah, you were going to be another victim. So I'm glad. I wouldn't have allowed you to become a victim. I would have done the same thing I did with Gloria. So it's fine. But anyway, so one of the things that people say is that, well, you know, they had no self-esteem, or they were not educated enough. And so, you know, we're here to show you that, I speak 3 languages. I have a degree in business. I have a JD, JD is a doctorate in law in California. I am licensed to practice law in California. I've done divorces and family law for 13 years, and my specialty is victims of domestic violence. So exactly where am I not trained and educated, right? And it happened to me. And how many degrees do you have? More or less. Exactly. 4 degrees, yeah. 4. And how would you say was your self-esteem before you married the person who was your psychopath in your life?
You know, I got to say, my parents did a beautiful job in lifting me up and all the experiences I've had in life. So, yeah, my self-esteem was not an issue until I was in that marriage.
And so the issue is not what your self-esteem looks like at the beginning. They always find people, always find people who are very accomplished, who have what they need, because what they need is a narcissistic fuel, right? So they're not going to go find somebody who's like, doing menial jobs. They're not going to find somebody who doesn't have a degree. They're not going to find somebody who doesn't have very high self-esteem. The job they want to do, because the only thing that they feel is that Schadenfreude, is that happiness at harming people. The only job, the only emotion that they are capable of feeling is the emotion of doing harm to somebody, of having really, really harmed you.
Which is a result of the power to control, right? They have to control, and they have to have power.
So when you're accomplished and when you have high self-esteem, it's like, see, I'm not so bad, because they do suffer from self-esteem. They do suffer from that, from that inability to see anything good in them, because they have nothing good in them. And so, and here Anna says they find people full of light. That's exactly what it is, right? That's exactly what it is. They find the light because they have none. And so they want to shut it down.
Look at Gina. Gina says it happened to me, and I don't even have a degree. But you are sparkle in anyone's life that knows you, Gina.
An empathic person. They find a empathetic person, whether or not you have a degree. But they find people that if they destroy, and that's their aim, if they destroy you, they can say, I destroyed this person, so she must not have been so good to begin with. I'm not that bad, because look at how she is destroyed. And I'm there.
And I will tell you something. I have probably the only male friend that joined. He is a beautiful person, Douglas, and he's a victim of this. I think he joined to support me, and he'll be surprised how much he's going to learn here. Because we may be using she, he,
to
do
both
less, but
sexes.
it happens to
And
both
in
sides.
gay
Okay?
relationships, and and all sorts of relationships. It happens to everybody. So, psychopathy doesn't come in just one flavor. It comes in many flavors. So Benito wants to be in the life. He wants to be
He
in the
wants
life.
to be in the
So
live.
anyway, so going back to the Tinder syndrome, when I hear that, I want to say to people, no, 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 no. This is one of the instances in which you have to say, there, but for the grace of God go I, right? So if it hasn't happened to you, I bet you that you know somebody who it has happened to. It has nothing to do with, oh, they had low self-esteem or whatever. That is called victim blaming, plain and simple, okay? And that is the same thing as when somebody gets raped, right? And you say, well, what was she wearing, right? And she was looking for it, or well, she was drunk, or she was drugged. It has nothing to do. What was she expecting? She was all drunk. A hangover? That's what she was expecting, a hangover, not a rape, right? That's when you get drunk, you expect a hangover. You don't expect to be raped. And so people have to stop victim blaming. So imagine the way I feel after this relationship is, imagine you're walking, just strolling along the street in a sidewalk, right, on the sidewalk, and you get run over by an 18-wheeler. What were you doing wrong? You were on the street, but you were not in the street. You were on the sidewalk. An 18-wheeler came, ran you over. Are you to blame for what happened? Well, you went out to the street. Yeah, I was alive. It happened because I was alive. It happened because I was empathetic. And that's exactly the type of people they look. So we need to, first of all, if we want to help people, we need to stop victim blaming. Okay, and so let's not do that anymore. Another thing that helps the victim is something that you said when we did our live in Spanish, is to simply listen. Can you tell us a little bit more, Anabelle, of why we shouldn't tell people what to do when they are going through a relationship like this, and why just listening is what you need to do, and being there?
Well, when you realize that this type of relationships are lacking tremendous empathy, they're lacking understanding. When you realize that, and a friend of yours or a daughter, son comes to you to speak to you about this, this is a way for them of understanding that there is really something wrong, and they don't really know how to come out of it, because most of the victims are problem solvers. They're leaders. They're people. They're not submissive people. Most of them are leaders, empathetic. They know how to problem solve. So this is like beyond their understanding, because they don't think like the other person, without naming again the disease or whatever. So the best way to really support is, number one, to acknowledge that what they're telling you is really something that they've lived through it. It's not a lie. They're not making it up. They're not crazy. So acknowledging when they come to you, and validating their feelings. In doing that, then you must shut up and listen. And I will say why. You may not understand where they're coming from, because unless you've been in those shoes, you really don't understand. Most people say you need to listen and understand, and you need to make sure that you give them some tools. And look, I'm a coach, I'm a psychologist. In these situations, no, you don't. You listen. You listen and you validate that person. And what is really important is, at the right time, because this may take several cycles, right, is really allow her or him to understand by asking questions, open-ended questions. How do they move on? How do they move on? Do not blame. Do not speak ill of the other person. Why I say that? I could never speak ill of my former husband. Never. I left that marriage, and Natalie, we're attest to very similar experience, madly in love with my ex-husband. And at the time, I didn't have a genesis. I didn't understand what was happening. My therapist didn't know about this, because there's certain therapies, and we'll talk about that, right, Natalie? You found the right therapy. So we're going to talk about therapy. And bottom line, it took me 10 years 10 years to heal from
How long were you,
this.
how long were you?
So that tells you how
Yeah.
deep the scars can be. So also one of the things I would say, and then we'll go back because I know I'm saying a lot of things that you want to comment on, Natalie. I see you going like this, just like me when you're talking. I want to interject. You know, I also think it's important now that you're starting to understand through Genesis and maybe reading up on yourselves, and she'll give you some authors and some really good material that really comes from Spain, but it's also in English. The sociopath will never take responsibility. He or she will blame you for everything. And at that point, you need to listen, because that person is asking themselves, what the hell did I do wrong? What if I would have done this instead of that? What if at that point, it doesn't matter what you try to do, you are never going to win. I'm going to tell you that again. You are never going to win. So either you become frozen and don't speak, or you run the hell away from there, which is what Natalie and I did. Some of us sooner, some of us
How long were
later.
you in the relationship?
So pause there,
How long
because
were
I
you
know
in
I
the
said a lot.
relationship, Anabelle? Because you said it took you 10 years to heal, but how long were you in the relationship?
10 years to heal, and still some things come back. I was in the relationship 8 years. 3 years we were boyfriend and
So you
girlfriend.
married him
5
after
years
3 years, and you also had, like me, witnessed the abuse from pretty much its very beginning after the love bombing.
Well, I think I saw some abuse at the beginning, but you know what's funny? You know when they say love is blind? It truly is. I mean, this guy would yell at me and I would say, oh, he's so macho. You know what? If he didn't do that to me, who's going to control me? I'm just such a tough cookie. And I mean, you make up all kinds of shit. You totally compensate and make up all kinds of stuff to
You
excuse
build
that
huge
person.
closets to put him in, because you want to protect them.
Yes, and poor thing, because I'm okay, but
No,
he's
it's just
not, and I have to
it's just
help
a
him.
cultural difference. And no, he just
Honestly,
doesn't know. No, he was just drunk that day. No, he just,
yeah.
he was upset because this had happened. So, this happened, this happened, this happened. So Anna is saying, I totally understand that. Yeah, you do, because you were a victim of that. So one of the
So I was, to answer your question short, but I had to just give a little context. Yes, we know from the beginning, but we don't want to see it. Love is blind. Until it just, there's a moment there where you just have a moment, it's that analogy of the frog, that there's water boiling. And if you're in the water and they turn on the fire, you're like, oh, it's hot in here. By the time you realize you can't jump out, right? It's just too late. But there's a point, the other part of that analogy is when the frog jumps into the super hot water and goes, whoa, this thing is burning, and jumps right out, right? So you realize, oh my gosh, I don't know how long it takes somebody, but I think what Natalie and her mission and her team are doing is really building awareness, educating people. This exists more than you think. So in this specific life, I mean, we want to cover a lot of topics, but it's how do you support the victim, right? And so, yes, I was married for 8 years. I had no support, none, because nobody understood this. And God forbid I brought anything out about my former husband, which you will talk about this, outside of those four walls. We were the perfect couple.
And so was I. And I left him 10 times. Oh, at least 10 times. I don't even know, I lost count, but at least I left him like 10 times. And I just couldn't. Like you, I left that relationship loving him like I've never loved anybody in my life. And so, and I did.
So speaking about making excuses, Natalie, share with the crowd what you would do before you would get to your
parents' It was the whole protocol. Have you seen, the West Wing in Madam Secretary? Okay. So those series about how protocol, how everything runs in Washington, D.C. And, there's advanced people, right? So when the president is going to be talking at an interview, or when the president is going to be, doing something, not even the president, but anybody, in Washington, they have their advanced team, right? And the advanced team has, you know, the job of telling, okay, we're you know, the eagle is coming in at such and such an hour, you must have this, he likes his coffee, he likes that, you need to have this, you know.
Oh, let me tell you that I want to pause for something that was really funny. So when I was an executive at Cisco, I had all the sports and entertainment worldwide. So the Grammys were one of my events. And we as executives and big executives for the Grammys, we got to meet somebody. So I met McCarthy one year.
Oh.
I had to meet Lady Gaga. So these people came in and briefed me all about Lady Gaga. It's a briefing, right? It's a briefing. So blah, blah, blah. She likes this, da, da, da. You're going to meet her at this time. You're just going to, it was the Grammy that she had the net. She was really cool looking. So they briefed me all. I get to her. Of course, they're doing the same thing on the other side, but I blank out. So I get to Lady Gaga. I go, hi, I'm your biggest fan. And she goes, you're my biggest fan. Annabelle, look what you've built. She called me by my name. She knew everything I had done and went on and on and on. And that was the end of my speech. I became so dumbfounded. I couldn't talk anymore. I just have to mention that because she had been more brief than me. And I just remember when you say that, when you know, they brief presidents and executives. That happened to me. Yeah. You know, you have to have that.
Exactly. No.
Anyways,
that was a funny
commercial break.
So that's what I became, because we always went into cars because there was always an issue. I mean, they make issues when there's not, right? But he always wanted to go in his car because he wanted to leave whenever he wanted. Like, he couldn't just tell me, hey, let's go home, you know, because we could go home. But he wanted to make it a point that, you know, that no, if I tell you to go home, then they're going to look at me weird and they're going to say, why are you breaking up the group? And I was like, yeah, but that has nothing to do with me. I'll leave, you know. But no, that's not what he wanted to do. So he usually went into his own car. And I, from my car, would call my parents, right? And I would say, okay, we're coming in. We're not going to talk about our move to Florida. You cannot tell him that he's overweight. He already knows that. Please don't harp on it, because otherwise he's never going to want to go back to your house. Please don't ask him about this. Please don't talk about this other thing. He doesn't know about that yet. So I would give him, you know, I would give him the rundown of things that they could not do.
It's all, it's preventing conflict all the time, because this person really treats you different at different times for no
you're
reason.
Guilty of things, even if it's not your fault. So even if my parents were the ones who brought something up, you know, he would go home and then call me from his car and say, your parents, you know, and just make this big hullabaloo about things that I had no control over. Hence, I took control, you know, hence I called them and I said, please don't talk about this, don't talk about the other, don't talk about the other. I many times saw myself as a toreador, you know, as a torero, because I knew how to go ole, you know, and how to avoid the bull, you know, when it came. So I became very nimble at doing that. And so if it's very important for you to understand as a support person that you cannot allow the victim to be left alone, because their main purpose in life is to first isolate their victims, okay? And so if you want to lose your daughter, if you want to lose your sister, if you want to lose your best friend, then go ahead and tell them things. Go ahead and insult the husband, you know, go ahead and insult the psychopath, or, you know, or say, I can't deal with you. I've told you 3 times to leave him and you won't. And therefore, you know, don't come into my house again with that man. You will lose him, you know, and maybe forever, right? And not only that, but you're also not helping the victim to escape the bad relationship, because you're basically cooperating with the psychopath who wants to isolate her. So I am very thankful in my life to the people who are closest to me, my kids, my family. They never once left me. My kids were like, we don't like this moron at all, but we're going to be putting up with him because he's your husband, you know, and we don't want to lose you as a mom, and we don't want him to do more harm to you. So if we leave, you know, then we're going to lose you, right? And
you know, you just said something really important for everybody who's listening to us, Natalie. When you see these characteristics, which you can see them because you're not in the relationship, or you can even ask your friend or daughter or son or whatever. You know, lying is very common, just so they can be off the hook.
Yeah.
Blaming is very common. They take no responsibility. Manipulation,
Masters.
they
They're
are
masters.
experts. Manipulating,
Yeah, yeah.
masterful. So when you start seeing, these sort of patterns in that person, or ask the person that you're trying to support exactly what Natalie say, whatever happens, and like I said about 10 minutes ago,
Right.
don't ever talk bad about that person, because
You might lose her.
your friend, son, daughter, mother, whatever, is in love with that person and has become a victim of how powerful mentally this disorder can
It can.
destroy you.
No, it
It
can.
can destroy you.
It
I don't
can.
care how educated you are. And so, anyways, what she's saying is support, how I said be
Listen.
empathetic, acknowledge
Listen.
and
Yeah.
validate. So let them know you're there for them. Hey, I may not like that person a lot, but you
Yeah.
do, and I'm here for you, you know?
Yeah.
So
Or
anyways, I
even,
just
or
wanted to
even,
emphasize
anytime you
because
want to talk to me, I'm here. And she may call you, 10 times in a month, or she may never call you, or she may only call you sometimes, because sometimes we are so aware.
and by the way, and she's
Yeah.
going to
And
tell you
over
the
again.
same story over and over. You can't go, oh, you already told me that last time and
And
you haven't done
let
anything.
them talk.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I understand. I see how you're feeling. Listen, just listen. Don't provide any
Yeah.
solutions.
One of the
They
things
just
that I
want you
was
to
taught,
listen.
Anabelle, when I trained for my, for what I do in domestic violence. Oh, hi, Dad. My dad just joined. Uh, one of the things that I was taught, Anabelle, to never do as an attorney when I deal with a victim of domestic violence, and it's exactly the same thing that I would tell people here, is once the victim is out, or when the victim is trying to get out, never tell them what to do. They have left, they have lived for whatever many years with a person who has taken such control of their lives that they make every decision and they tell them what to do. And so when you substitute yourself out for that person, you're doing exactly the same kind of harm. The thing, the thing that the person needs the most
Exactly.
is somebody who believes enough in her or in him to say, and I know you will make the right decision. So what decision would you like to make? What?
Or maybe not even at that time, right? But I mean, I remember how much I emphasized this too on our first live, because people have a tendency to go, well,
Yeah,
then
like it's
leave if you're
so
unhappy.
hard,
Well,
so
then
easy.
call the police. Come on, then
Yeah.
confront him. Don't you know
No,
how to
you
confront
can't.
him? I mean, come on, where are your
Yeah, you
ovaries?
can't.
Where are your balls? Don't ever tell him. You have to do this. You have to call the police. You have to tell him you can't live like this anymore.
Yeah,
Ever,
yeah,
ever, ever, don't
yeah.
ever, ever,
And
ever tell
don't
the
and
person
don't
what to
tell
do.
them when are you leaving them. It's a process. It's a process. Yeah.
It's obvious,
Yeah.
but you
My
can't.
dad
No,
is
no,
here watching
no.
us,
Let me
and
just
I
say,
remember there was one day when I happened to be at their house because I wanted to there was something that I had to take to their house, and we had just had a blown out argument. And I came to their house and I was really upset and telling them what about the good thing that I had, and I say the good thing, at least for me, is that I'm a very, very open person. So everybody knows everything. I'm like an open book. And so unless you tell me this is a secret, it won't be because I will share
yeah,
it.
right,
And
right.
and so everybody knew what was going on at any one given point. And so that's why people knew from the very beginning that the relationship was abusive, because I had already shared things that had happened. So I remember my dad saying something like, "Oh my God, when are you leaving him finally?" Because obviously this is going to keep happening. I can't understand why and he went into the typical, dad, please leave him, right? And my mother did
Right.
something very wise on that day. She turned to him with eyes that could have killed him, right? And she's like, Natalie is a grown woman and she knows what she needs to do and when she needs to do it. So whenever she's ready to take that step, if she's ever going to take it, it will be her decision, not ours. And I couldn't tell you how happy I was that she said that, because it made me feel validated, right?
Validated.
My dad was making me feel like he needed to take the decision for me because I was weak, I was feeble, I wasn't able to make it.
That is the
Yeah, there you go.
protector.
Exactly.
You're his little girl.
And that's not what you need.
know?
You need somebody who will validate you. You need somebody who understands that this is a process, and it's not an easy process at all, you know. And for people who are on the outside, they don't understand how really complicated it is, because they don't understand about the perverse alternation of the very, very, very good stimuli and the very, very bad stimuli, right? So when it's good, it's amazing. It's like no relationship you'll ever have in your life. You guys cannot understand how incredible this is. The amount of, there's a substance in your brain that is called phenylethylamine, right? And it's a serotonin-like stuff. It's actually a cousin of methamphetamines. Okay, so does that tell you how addictive it is, right? And that is the substance that they release in you when they do something so incredibly good that you feel like you're floating. Gloria says it best when she says that she wasn't walking, she was levitating, because that's what it feels like. It feels like you're 17 again and you're levitating, okay? And so, but it's not only like at the beginning. Any relationship at the beginning may feel that way. It's like the entire freaking 10 years that you are with this person, you're going to feel that way at times, right? But then, you know, in comes the bad. So that's what they do. They create an addiction to this very, very addictive substance that you have in your brain. You want more of it. But you want more of it? I can dish out this thing. If you can withstand all of these insults and all of this, you know, put downs and this and this and the other that I'm going to do to you, the gaslighting.
Well, which means if you let me control
exactly.
you can have some more of that.
Yeah,
Not argue with me. Even a friend will call you up and tell you, you know, the night before it was horrific, this and that, and you're listening, because we just learned we're going to listen. We're not going to provide solutions, and we're not going to tell them what to do. And then they'll tell you, but the next morning he made me breakfast and he brought it to bed, and you, oh my God, he's just.
And he brought me roses.
Him, you know,
I had roses every week for the 10 years that I was with this guy in my life. Every week, right? I had songs dedicated to me. I had songs written for me, right? He wrote songs for me. And I would come in into any restaurant where he was playing, and he would say, an applause for my gorgeous wife, Natalie, who just walked into this room. He made me feel like I was Miss Universe. And that was the first relationship in my life that I ever had where I felt beautiful, you know? So that's a gift he gave me. He gave me the gift of understanding that I was a beautiful woman. No one had ever done that for me, right? And so, but he used it, you know, in a way that made me addicted to all this phenylethylamine, right? And then he would do things at home behind closed doors and nobody knew, right? And so, and that's what kills you. And by the way, what did he do? Well, you know, it's not like he strangled me. It's not like he raped me. It's not like, no, the things they do are not so egregious that you're going to go, oh my God, why? Yeah, I would have left if something like that would have happened. They're very small things, very measured things, but very pervasive.
Well, remember what I told you about what my dad told me about Javier, that I just said that he was really an emotional termite. It's just, it eats at you very slowly. You don't even know it's happening.
And it happens day in and day out, many times a day, but it's small things. So it's like the Chinese water torture, right? It's not, I mean, a drop of water, how can that torture you? Live with that, you know, live with that day in and day out, and many times a day. That's what kills you. I mean, it emotionally wears you down.
Natalie, I wanted to talk about you the medical part. You mentioned the exhilarating, you know, hormone that releases in your brain when they treat you so amazingly beautiful. There's the other side of the medical part, which I mentioned in the first live, which is that when you're under such stress and harassment for so long, the cells in your brain begin to shrink. What happens when those cells begin to shrink? They don't bounce back right away because you're constant in this turmoil. You're constantly being abused, emotionally abused, is probably worse sometimes than physical. So the brain cells shrink, and what happens to you is that you start having memory loss. You start having really foggy brain. You really can't make sense of things. And it's very, very difficult to learn new things as well. So if you are experiencing this, or the victim that you know, the person that you know, ask those kind of questions. Are you finding yourself like being confused or having memory loss? That is an exact result of a brain and the emotional part. We know we're not just our mind, we're not our body, we're our soul, we're everything, right, together. But if your brain cells begin to shrink because of the amount of stress and the amount of abuse that happens with emotional blackmail, which there's a lot of emotional blackmail in these relationships, you will experience.
And not only that, remember that it's not only that, you have cortisol levels that are very, very high. So you have cortisol and adrenaline levels. What happens is that those substances are made, there's a time for crisis, right, mode. For when you, oh my God, there's a tiger, what do? You know, so I either flee or I fight. And so they give you the strength, but it's like a huge release of those hormones into your body. And so that you can deal with whatever crisis, you know, you're faced with. When those hormones are in your body for a chronic period of time, which happens when you're in a relationship like this, right? Then they start to destroy your body. Yeah, then what you said, that your brain cells get destroyed. You start to get brain fog. Add to that the cognitive dissonance that you're already experiencing, because you cannot understand half of the things that are going on with you. Sometimes you don't even remember your name, right? I was talking to a person that I recently met, and I was telling him, I don't know how I practiced for 10 years, because the fact that I had to compartmentalize to be an attorney at the same time that I was dealing with a crisis at home where he just told me he's going to divorce me and he's going to leave, you know, and you're like, oh my God, you know, how did I practice for 10 years? And it comes at a very high emotional cost, right? And so you will find all that. Oh, and the worst thing is that the more you go through the brain fog, and the more you have the memory loss, and the more you have the inability to act cognitively the way that you used to, the more they will harp on you, on how crazy you are. See, you didn't even remember this. See, you didn't even do that right. See, this is what I'm telling you, you're going crazy. So it's all the gaslighting, right? That they start to use it against you, and you're like, oh my God, he's right. So that's why at Genesis, our motto is, you're not crazy and you're not alone. Because the majority of the victims feel like they are crazy and they are alone, which is not true, right? So you need to be aware that, yes, those things are real. They are happening to you. No, you're not alone. You're not the only person that this has happened to. It is a pattern of behavior. You would die if you saw how absolutely similar my ex-husband was to her ex-husband, and to your ex-husband, and to everybody's exes, right? I mean, it is exactly the same pattern of the love bombing, the casing of the victim, you know, the getting in with the Trojan horse, you know, all those things happen the same.
Look,
what?
As you know, I was just in Spain for 2 months, and I had some coaching clients there, and one of them was exactly this. It's a young man, very handsome, very smart, 2 young kids, unfortunately, and it's his wife, and it's more on the narcissistic disorder side than it is on the sociopath. Sometimes they just kind of mix with each other. But as I'm explaining to him, are you feeling this? Are you, the whole foggy brain did this? Because I know the results, right? He's like, how do you know all this? How did you just study this stuff? And I go, no. And, it's fascinating because the pattern is there. And I wanted to do something, Natalie, just in the sake of time, because I know we have 15 minutes. I don't know if you open it for questions, but if you don't, I would just want to, I was going back and forth between the interview, what happened to me, what some of my clients have shared with me on this situation, which I don't have a lot of clients on the psychology path because I don't want to really do that, but it happens. I was coaching them as an executive, and boom, this happened, life happens, right? So anyways, but So we said to acknowledge and validate the person. What's happening, it's happening. If they're not ready to leave, just listen. Don't blame. Don't tell them what to do. You know, they already get enough blame in their relationship. They don't need you to do that too, right? So, and then doing the exercise of listening and acknowledgement, you really support the behavior of healing that person, whether you think you're healing or not. Also, really have a conversation about how they're not responsible for this.
Very important. Yeah.
They are not responsible for what's happening because because we are responsible people and we're problem solvers.
We take it on.
And we're leaders and we're empathetic.
Take it on.
Anything,
well, it doesn't help. It doesn't help that when you leave the relationship, then there's people who are not, unfortunately, not informed, and those are the people you should not be talking to, right? I have a dear friend, love him to pieces, but when he told me what he told me, I said, I need to first deal with everybody else. I mean, I will talk to everybody else, but not to this man. Because he said, well, I know that he's not good, but what part did you have in it? If anybody tells you what part did you have in it, obviously they're not understanding.
Such a good, yes.
And they're not your therapist.
And they're not
and
your
if a therapist ever tells you that, you're in the wrong therapy, right? Because there are many therapists who will do that, and they're you know, that's like cognitive behavioral therapy. That is not the therapy you need. You need a therapy that is based on, let's talk about that. You need a therapist that is based on EMDR, okay? And it is why? Because you are just coming out of the Vietnam War, right? You have post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's a very, very specific piece of the type of therapy that you need. It cannot be Gestalt, it cannot be cognitive behavior, it cannot be any one of those. It's about moving things in your brain. That's why EMDR works. EMDR is based on, you know, closing your eyes like that and saying things and tapping and colors and things. So it can even be done online. And I have a very good therapist in Malaga who does it online. It took me, Anabelle, 4 sessions to be functional again with her, right?
4 sessions versus 10 years.
And that's why it's critical that people know that when you're going through this, you're going to end up with PTSD. It is very real, but you need to find yourself a therapist that works, not the type of regular therapist.
Well, so before we go to therapy, as we're going through kind of these steps, Natalie, if the person that you're talking to starts to talk to you about, I really think I need to do something about this. I can't live like this anymore, right? They're not saying I'm going to leave. They're not saying anything. They're just saying there's something wrong here, right? Because that's the moment where you can come in and do the open-ended questions. That's the moment where you say, you know, why do you think that? They will tell you. They know. Yeah. It's deep down in there. They know. So it's a moment of them to be able to express to you, because remember, they can't express this anywhere in their relationship. There's a lot of undermining in their relationship. There's a lot of invalidating. And you are doing exactly the opposite. You are giving them credit. You are listening to them. You are validating, and you're asking just the right questions. So if you find that your friend, your daughter, your son is at a stage where they are really concerned and they're wanting to find some space, this is when you give them the tools, give them Genesis, connect them to Genesis, tell them that this is a time to start putting some distance just so that they can think more clearly. Doesn't mean you're going to leave the person. Just start putting some distance so that you can have some me time. Go take walks. You know, I'll go with you. Let's do walks. Again, these are baby steps in these kind of relationships, because both Natalie and I left madly in love with our exes. And this person will probably experience the same thing because of that levitating, because it's so confusing. It's so confusing. So reinforce to them, it's not about you. Reinforce to them and validate they're doing the right thing. You're there for them. And then, you know, there will be that call where you talk about maybe the therapist, or if you take them to the tools, because you're not a psychologist or a coach, but there's tools in Genesis. That's why Natalie began this mission. listen, you. So that's why Natalie began this mission. So I just wanted to, before we talked about therapy, and I think it's very fascinating, you can, unless we're going to do Q&A, but to tell, when is the person ready? You know, when are you ready to say, find some distance? How can I help? Hey, I know this group of women who put together this organization. Would you be interested? Can I send you a video on this? And maybe that's what's happening. I have friends who have experienced this, even if you don't. I've heard about this. You saw it in a live session. Doesn't matter. But be there for them, because this is the time when they're really thinking.
And another thing that is very important that I want to get in before I have to cut this off, because we started earlier, so I don't want to go over, because I want to be able to put this on YouTube, is, to me, it was really important to be able to talk about it ad nauseum. Okay, so don't ever tell the victim, enough already, it's been 6 months, enough already, it's been 20 years. It doesn't matter how long it's been, right? It's everybody processes in a different way. The fact that they're talking, I even had people who very, you know, in a very with very good intentions, told me, you cannot mention his name. Look, he's not Voldemort. It happened to me. It's part of my life. Right, so I will mention his name, not in my life. I don't ever do that. But I am allowed. It was part of my life. I don't want to erase it. It would be erasure. I mean, people want to erase that part of my life. It existed, and it existed for a very good reason. It existed because it allowed me to be so much better now than I was when I came into his life. It existed because I have this mission in life now. It existed because, you know, a million things. The people that are in my life right now, you know, all of you. I mean, it exists because we are making a true difference in the world. And so I don't want to be erased. I don't want to ever forget that I went through that experience, because that experience made me who I am. And so don't ever tell me to shut up and stop talking about it. I have people who told me, you know, if you tell me again his name, or if you mention him again, I am going to hang up the phone. And I'm like, okay, let's not talk anymore. Bye. You know? And so again, isolation.
And this is why it's so critical. Also, by the way, it's so critical that you choose who you talk to.
Exactly.
That is not the person you talk to. And just like Natalie has had a need to express and talk about it over and over and whatever, there's the other side of the pendulum. People who just totally recede and won't talk about it. And it's up to you to
Anna says, I was talking about my experience with a friend of mine, and it was hard for me to verbally speak his name, and it did sound like I was saying Voldemort's name. And for some people, and that's precisely why I chose the opposite tact, Anna, because I didn't want to give him that power of having his name be so hallowed that I wouldn't be able to pronounce it, you know. And so I started saying it from the beginning. I started mentioning to people from the beginning. People knew that I was in this abusive relationship. Everybody knew, you know, so that they wouldn't be caught off guard when I said I'm leaving him. But I'm a very proactive, you know, type of person. And I am a very open, like I said, type of person. So, you know, not everybody is the same. Everybody has their own healing tactics. So don't ever tell the victim. One of the things that really makes us feel bad is people telling us, it's been 3 months, you shouldn't be talking about this anymore. No, you have no idea. You know, it's like telling a Vietnam vet that they can't talk about their experience in war. What are you doing? Why are you not respecting what the person went through? You know, you have no idea. Nothing in your life that has happened to you has been equal to the level of trauma that the person has caused in you. So let them speak is the least you can do for a victim, is to let them speak their truth.
And you know what? And honestly, it's almost, if you don't have time, because sometimes the person wants to just keep on and keep on, just be very, very, you know, you can say, listen, Natalie, I hear you. I have to run. Let's talk tomorrow. That's all. You know, that's all. But don't shut them down. Don't tell them they need to just get over it.
It's going to trigger you, because maybe you are a victim, you know, and not everybody's like me that, I'll talk to you about it. You know, it doesn't trigger me. It doesn't trigger me because I went through the therapy and I did all the stuff that I did, and we are creating a seminar that we're going to be launching hopefully soon, but we've been saying this, and it allows us, it combines everything that Gloria and I did to heal And so much healing has happened that we are able to do this without crying, you know, and without breaking down. But and so I totally forgot what I was trying to say. Yeah, I totally left the station at this point. That train of thought just left. But I think it's important to let people process the way that they want to process and take the time that they need to take, you know.
Natalie, how do they get a hold of, you know, Genesis U?
They can
Who don't know
they can
you?
watch, you know, through the YouTube video. They can watch our videos. They can contact me via WhatsApp at 408-799-8149. Text are better.
I can give them that
but
number
if they're in Genesis, if they follow Genesis, well, if
they may not. So tell them what.
Watching us,
well,
they are.
They're now on
they can't watch us without following us. So they just need to get on Genesis _ SNG, like Sandra, Natalie, and Gloria. Okay, remember those 3 names of the 3 founders. Genesis _ SNG, and they can follow us, and then they can contact us through private messaging, and we will contact them so that we can discuss because not every break in a relationship has to do with psychopaths, right? So you can be breaking a relationship for many things, but we can get you into the.
Well, there's a lot of also knowledge on narcissistic disorder.
So, but so they can contact us through the private, you know, message, Instagram, and we can set up an appointment to talk to you and see if there's a fit between you and what we do, and we will get you in the support group. So, absolutely. Okay, and keep following us because we're going to keep doing these things. Okay, and all of July is going to be in English, peeps. So, just so you're aware. All right. Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anabelle, for being here, and we will let you know. We'll set a date for our next one. Okay. So appreciative.
Okay,
so
sounds
appreciative
wonderful. Happy to help and support you. Oh my gosh, it's an honor. I'm so proud of what you've done, and Gloria, and yes, just really keep doing the great work. And I'm here. All right,
bye-bye, and thank you to everybody who was listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.